Section 2.6, dividing decimals. Today we're going to talk about how we divide multi-digit decimals. Okay, this connects to our GVC for this year. GVC 1, I can divide multi-digit decimals. Okay, so that's our goal for the end of this lesson. Important vocabulary. Okay, in this section, really we've already learned all about decimals, so nothing new there. But we do need to make sure that we are familiar with these words. Quotient. Okay, quotient is a word that means the answer to a division problem. Okay, that should be review for us. I have that taped to the front of my room above the whiteboard. Also, okay, again, let's remind ourselves of what is the divisor and what is the dividend. The divisor is the number by which another number is being divided. Okay, so in two different examples, if we have 3.2 being divided by 1.1, the second number is always the divisor. Okay, or if you have a number being divided, like 4 divided by 2, okay, the number that is outside of the house, okay, so the number by which another number is being divided is the divisor. Okay, so in this case, it's either the second number or the number outside of the box or the house is the divisor. Okay, so now let's talk about what is the dividend. Well, the dividend is the number that is being divided into parts. Okay, so the first number is our divisor. Or sorry, the second number is the divisor, the first number is the dividend. Okay, so this is the dividend and this is the dividend. Okay, so make sure that we have that clear. So, when we are dividing decimals, if given a horizontally written problem like this, the blank number always goes under the box or the house. Okay, well, which one is it? Which one goes under the house? Well, we just talked about the dividend goes under the box or the house. So the first number, that's this blank, the first number always goes under the box or the house. The first number right here. Okay, this is the dividend. Dividend. Okay. Number 2, if there is a blank in the divisor, move it the amount of spaces needed to be at the end of that number. So if there is a decimal in the divisor being the second number, divisor, okay, so if you have a decimal in the divisor, the number you are dividing by, and the dividend, then move the decimal in the dividend the same number of spaces to the right as you did for the divisor. Okay, so let's take a look. If we had, for example, 3.2 divided by 1.1. Okay, so we have a decimal in our divisor and in our dividend. So if I move the decimal in my divisor, I also have to move the decimal the same number of spaces in my dividend, is what that means. Okay, so that is step number 3. Number 4, after the decimal has been moved, then place your decimal on top. Okay, so once we have moved our decimal in both the divisor and the dividend, then you place your decimal directly above in your answer. Okay, and the very last step says divide normally, ignoring the decimal. Divide normally, ignoring the decimal. Okay, so opposite of multiplication, when we multiply decimals, you have to multiply first and then take care of the decimal at the end. Well, when we divide by a decimal, you have to take care of the decimal before we start the problem, and then after that, then you just divide straight through. So let's do two examples together. This is an example with a decimal in the dividend, okay, which means that our dividend, again, is our number that goes under the house. Okay, so 16.4 divided by 4. This is our dividend, this is our divisor, or what we're dividing by. Okay, so we know that 4 does not go into 1, 4 goes into 16. Okay, 4 goes into 16 4 times, so we put the 4 right above the 6 because it's going into 16, not 1. Okay, so because 4 goes into 16, your 4 goes right above the 6. Well, 4 times 4 is 16. So now we got to subtract. 16 minus 16 is 0. 4 does not go into 0, so I have to bring down the next number, which is a 4. Okay, we forgot about already, okay, that we have a decimal in our dividend, so the decimal needs to go straight above. We do not have a decimal in the divisor, so we did not have to move the decimals. It just went straight above the divisor. Okay, we know that 4 goes into 4 one time. 1 times 4 equals 4. Now we subtract and we have nothing left over. So my answer is 4 1/10 is how we say that. Okay, so remember, as a review, if there is a decimal only in the dividend, you just move the decimal straight up top in your answer. Okay, now let's look at an example with a decimal in the divisor. So in this number, the divisor again is the dividend is the first number. So we have 24.5, that is our dividend. Our dividend is being divided by the second number, which is our divisor, which is 2.25. Okay, well, if we look back at our steps, the first step is how we set up the problem. So first, the dividend goes underneath the house, the divisor goes out in front of the house. Okay, then the second step is if there is a decimal in the divisor, move it the amount of spaces needed to be at the end of the number. Okay, well, in this case, our divisor has 2 decimal places, so we need to move this decimal over once, twice. Okay, then it says if you have a decimal in the divisor, then move the decimal in the dividend the same number of spaces to the right. Okay, so in this case, we need to move our decimal 2 spaces. Well, you might ask, well, how am I going to move another space if I don't have a number there? Well, if you have to move an extra space, that means that you have to add a 0. Okay, and our decimal is going to go straight above where we moved it in our dividend. So now that we've taken care of our decimal, now we can just divide. Well, we know that, let's see, 225 does not go into 2, it does not go into 24, so it must go into 245. We know that 225 goes into 245 one time, so the 1 goes above the 5 because we went into 245. Okay, 1 times 225 is 225. So now we must subtract. 5 minus 5 is 0. 4 minus 2 is 2. And 2 minus 2 is 0. Well, now 225 does not go into 20, so I must bring down my 0. 225 also does not go into 200, so now I have to add a 0 in my answer and add another 0. Okay, now we're going to bring down that last 0. So now 225 into 2,000. How many times does 225 go into 2,000? Okay, we're going to have to do a little guess and check. Okay, we know that 2 goes into 20 10 times. Okay, so we might try just less than that. Okay, so I'm going to try 225 times 9. So we have 9 times 5 is 45. Carry the 4. 9 times 2 is 18 plus 4 is 22. Carry the 2. 9 times 2 is 18 plus 2 is 20. Okay, well that's just too much. Just too much. So we know that 225 must go into 2000 only 8 times. Okay, again, we're going to have to do a little bit of extra work to see what that equals. So we have 225 times 8. 5 times 8 is 40. Carry the 4. 8 times 2 is 16 plus 4 is 20. Carry the 2. And 8 times 2 is 16 plus 2 is 18. Okay, so now we know that 8 times 225 is 1,800, and we have to subtract. Okay, when we subtract we get 0, 0. We can't subtract 8 from 0, so we have to borrow. 10 minus 8 is 2. So we're left with 200. So notice, now 225 does not go into 200. So when we add another 0 and bring it down, we have now repeated the same number, 2000. So because we know that number has repeated, our decimal is going to repeat. So we put a bar over top of the 8, and we know our answer is 10 and 8/10 repeated. Okay, which means that the 8 is going to repeat. Okay, so as a review, okay, anytime we have a decimal inside of our divisor, we have to move it to the end next to the house. If there is a decimal in your dividend, you must move the decimal the same number of spaces, 1, 2. Okay, and then when you're finished, you put the decimal right up top, and then you divide like normal. Okay. I want you to try the 2 example problems that are on the back or on the next page. Okay, they are actually on the next page. So here are our two example pause and tries. You're going to give those a try. Come and check them with me. When you're finished, you can grab your assignment.